All right, back in action. Talk to me, PDD, episode number 5. Talk about books I read in May. I'm your host, PDD. My opportunity to talk about people management, productivity, leadership, and today some reading. So I, been writing on LinkedIn for a while. Started posting the books that I read every month, just sort of as a way for me to reflect back, remind myself what I read, kind of a cool way to connect with other people as I got recommendations, gave shout outs, had a little conversation. Started that a little while ago. Then for this year, for 2024, I set myself a goal to read 60 books or more. So 5 every month. So then posting up my summary became a way to keep myself accountable for that, in addition to the other things. So um, I did that before Cal Newport's book Slow Productivity came out, but it's a concept that he talks about there called setting a schedule, or announcing a schedule, I should say, where you're investing a certain amount of your own social capital to hold you accountable and make sure that you're going to do that. Obviously, nothing too terrible will happen if I don't reach that goal, or if I don't post about 5 books that I read in a given month. But it does help to have that, thinking about, okay, I want to keep on track so I can do this, and have it out there. So that's one of the things that's been helpful with it. I do think about it a little bit too, like a much more scaled down version of what Jocko Willink does, posting I don't know if he still does it. I don't follow him on Instagram, but a picture of his watch at 4:30 or 4:45 in the morning every day, getting his workout in. So instead of being up at 4:45 working out hard every day, I'm doing one post a month about some books I read in the month. So different scale, same idea. So yeah, I was just going to go through quickly some of the books I read and a little bit about the process and how I've been sort of trying to keep on track with it. So all right, number one, The Go Giver. Really enjoyed this. It's a pretty small read. It's nice to have, for me, at the beginning of the month, something to kind of chalk off as, all right, I got one down, or something I can get through quickly. Um, so yeah, this book was really fun. Just about the different mindset from trying to do everything for yourself, and instead trying to do things for others and to be an enabler to grow your network, and how that's going to pay you back. So I've definitely found that to be true. This is sort of a fictionalized story that tells these tales over a course of a number of days. The structure of it really reminded me of another book that I read a couple years ago, called The Phoenix Project, which is using a similar type of story and narrative to explain how DevOps and lean and some concepts like that work. So making it kind of fun to learn about these things. Go Giver definitely took a similar approach to it. Yeah, so that's that one. The next one was Born Standing Up, by Steve Martin. I One of the reasons that I picked this book is because Cal Newport's book "So Good They Can't Ignore You" is based off of a Steve Martin quote. So then I heard he had this biography, or kind of partial biography, out about his stand-up career, so wanted to read it. Again, this was, pretty light read, so good to get through quickly, really entertaining. I found it really honest and authentic. Was really interesting to learn about his life, his relationship with his parents. One of his comments was about, after he grew up and left home, he really didn't call home, and it wasn't because he didn't want to. It's sort of like he didn't know he had to do that. So I think that's something that's interesting, that there are some things that seem like common sense, but we may not know, just because we don't know, and we learn about it later. So that was kind of cool. Just how long it took him to perfect his craft and break through to become the sensation that he was, in stand up. And then sort of how it's a bit ironic how once that happened, it became really difficult for him to be creative in the way that he had, in obscurity. And so he had this period where he was famous, but it was sort of the culmination of all of that, but then sort of the end of it at the same time. So, yeah, really good book. Third one up, Executive Presence 2.0. So this is a updated version to Executive Presence 1, I guess, which I hadn't read. So this book is mostly the same. It's mostly the first version, and then just a small update. So this was a survey of executives done for the first one in 2012 and then again in 2022, I believe, sort of about um, what sort of presence and presentation they found important um, in executives and leaders. So really interesting things. Some areas that you might not necessarily get feedback about because they can be sensitive, but they do impact how your content, your performance is perceived. So I think it's a really valuable read to have and just to understand that experience. And it's not necessarily saying that you have to always follow the rules, but understanding what they are, but also understanding that they can change because looking back from 2012 to 2022, there are some things that are the same and there are some things that changed. And then there are people in between who broke those rules, sort of about presentation and professionalism and things like that. And because they were breaking the rules, that's how the rules changed. So something to bear in mind and just think about how your presentation impacts how your content is perceived. So, one of the things that you might worry about, kind of thinking about that presentation, is like, oh, well, that seems kind of phony or inauthentic, but it's really not. And I found it a good thing to think about and really aligning that with your authentic presentation. So, um, I'll read a little bit from it just quickly that resonated me with for that part. So take heart. While wrestling with the EP code is hard and can sometimes eat into your soul, these struggles create the conditions that allow you to flower and flourish. Once you've demonstrated that you know how to stand with the crowd, you get to strut your stuff and stand apart. It turns out that becoming a leader and doing something amazing with your life hinge on what makes you different, not on what makes you the same as everyone else. So there you go. Hopefully that inspires you that you can be authentic and still learn some of these rules about presentation. Up next, the 48 Laws of Power. So this thing's pretty big. It's like, hey, I'm big and powerful. You better watch out. It even looks like it in the book. I finished that in May. I didn't start it in May. I think I started it in February or maybe even in January. Each of the 48 rules is its own section. They are pretty dense. So yeah, I definitely recommend not just kind of reading this cover to cover, but going back to it and having something else there. There are some additional stories and excerpts in the margins, which is one of the things that make it look so big. I found those were pretty hard to read. I just in the way they were typeset. I have pretty good vision, but they're small and printed in red. So about halfway through, I kind of gave up on those. I don't think they really add a whole lot to the book. So just talking about different power dynamics, how those came into play in history. Um, it's along the lines of like the Art of War or Machiavelli as the Prince, that sort of thing. So you're gonna have to apply it if you try and take it literally and go in and try and use that kind of power influence directly. Probably not going to end up so well. But interesting to think about. It's sort of presented it in maybe a negative light that you're using power to manipulate and do things in your own self interest. But I think if you look at some of these just as human dynamics, you can do it. You can utilize some of these tools in a way to influence in a positive thing. It's also, I think, a good lesson that a lot of these stories, even some of the people that were masters of power and using some of these laws, ended up dead or in bad situations. So be warned on that. And last but not least is Uptime by Laura Mae Martin. Not that I need another productivity book and wasn't planning on reading any, but I heard Laura Mae Martin as a guest on Laura Vanderkam and Sarah Hart Unger's podcast, Best of Both Worlds. I was like, okay, I have to read this book. It's a really interesting story. Laura Mae Martin was in sales at Google, and she was so successful, but yet at the same time had a really balanced workload because she was so organized in her planning and the way she executed. People came to her for advice on planning, and she ended up making a role for herself at Google, just being a planning and productivity expert. So I thought that was really interesting. Lots of general good productivity and planning advice in there. She has her own version of multi-scale time planning that she talks about as a funnel, kind of similar to other systems I've seen. A good one as well. Some of the unique things I liked were her encouraging people to think about their energy level at different parts of the day. So not just blocking out time in general when it's available, but matching your energy level to the type of work that you're thinking about doing in that time. I thought that was something unique that I hadn't seen in other productivity and planning books. So that was kind of cool. Um, she has a nice example of sorting laundry in a really inefficient way to illustrate how people have traditionally approached working with their email. So I thought that was really powerful. Good to check that out. And the last thing that I really liked is something that I've struggled a little bit to reconcile, being somebody who is a people manager and values time spent with the people I manage and colleagues, but also somebody who values productivity and planning and avoiding meetings, is how to reconcile those two. So, one of the things that she talks about in types of meetings is that she has one specifically where the purpose of the meeting is for connection. And I think that makes a lot of sense for people managers or just in general, where yes, you may want to limit the number of meetings you have for work so you can, get into more focus time or other things like that. But it is okay, and I think really desirable in some roles, to have meetings where the purpose is to connect. So, yeah, hopefully you enjoyed those. Let me know books that you like, if you've read these and like them. So, thank you very much. And next time, I think we're going to get into the third C of the three C's framework that I talk about, which is courage. So, hope you enjoyed. Talk to you soon.